But we've got to glaze the coach. Now this one side is glazed, and we now have to glaze the other. Now I've cut some glazing. This is fairly thin plastic glaze. It doesn't need to be too thick, but it is very, very easy to mark it. So be careful. It also generates static electricity, which is a very beggar. It picks up every last little bit of fluff and stuff. Now I've already cut it to size, width-wise. You're best if you use a safety rule. If you just sort of rest it on the cutting mat and your fingers go in there and you're immune from damage. So I'm just going to cut this to size. A pair of scissors will do. Cut it slightly over long to begin with. Once you've cut this stuff, what I advise is cutting it only when you need it. Don't sort of cut it into strips and then leave it in some position, because what will happen is it'll get marked. And try, as I say, try not to scratch it. It's very easily scratched. There we go. Now you have to mark where it's going to go. So what I do is just use a black felt tip marker and touch where it's going to be glued. Now there are the positions where you're going to put the glue. So let's turn that over. Now whatever you do, don't use super glue. In that lies the path of ruin, because it will grab instantly, and it also has a habit of blooming. It reacts with the sweat in your fingers, and you come back next morning and the whole side has the appearance of being frosted. So whatever you do, don't put the super quick, that's a building kit, isn't it? Super glue on, and when you put the Evo stick on, put it on with the aid of the ubiquitous cocktail stick and just put a smear on the mark where you've put the little black mark. I'm going to be using the Evo stick in impact mode. By that I mean it goes tacky and then you bring the two bits of it together. As always, have ventilation. So here I've smeared the Evo stick in strategic places. Now it's going to go off fairly quickly because we're working under very, very hard, hot lights. Having said be careful, like a complete dunce, I've sort of popped it on my workbench. If you do get the odd stringy bit of Evo stick, it does have a habit of doing that. Then wait till it's more or less set, and then you can just pick it off. If you try and smear it, it does react, it does affect the plastic glaze. So don't assume when it's dry you can just pick it off. It will have penetrated the surface, but that's all to our advantage. And just check, yeah, that's fine. This is where there's a risk of it going wrong, so I'm just going to sort of jockey that into position. And it gives you a tiny little bit of grace, and pinch it. Check that none has oozed out. Any odd little bits. If they do ooze out, as long as it's not too much, you can sort of pick it back with the aid of a cocktail stick. But just be careful. Pinch it on. And there you are. There's a tiny little bit there. See, it will just pick away. Now, we are told on the drawing that certain windows are opaque. Now, there are one or two ways of doing this. A very simple way is to just use white plastic card instead of the glazing, but that never looks entirely convincing to me. So what I'm going to do is just paint it white behind. So noting which windows are white, make sure we've got the right side. It's every one of these, so here we go. And all one does is just paint. Not that, don't dribble. That was lucky. A little bit gone on the outside. It's more dribbly than I thought, this paint, so be careful. Try not to get bits in it, but whatever you do, don't flood it to such an extent that it oozes. Check. Sometimes 2 coats are necessary, but I think this paint's a bit old, so 1 or 2 little blobs in it. This can be quite therapeutic, because it doesn't matter what the surface of the paint is like, because you're in fact seeing its backside. That's got it. And one final trick is to put curtains on. This is an ancient pot of LNER Garter blue. First tended to have blue curtains, so this really is a bit on the gooey side. And you have to just then do a deft sort of twist. To represent the curtain, like so. I've also been working on the one that goes with the restaurant first, which is the open second, restaurant open second. This doesn't have heavy duty bogies, so these have the ordinary Gresley bogies. The coach was put together in exactly the same way, and it's held together in the same way with the little 8BAs. One thing I've done is fit the trice footboards to the bogies. These all come with Robin's kit bits and pieces, by the way. But one thing that does tend to get damaged in all this assault, all this butchery, is the cornice, the cantrail. And you do tend to, it's almost impossible to get it absolutely dead straight. It is with my skills. So I'm going to show you how to reinstate that. And for that, I shall be using just this micro strip. I'm not quite sure how big it is. I very, when I say unscientific, not very sensible. I did just acquire the right size. It's sold in all sorts of size, often mixtures, so just choose what you think is near enough. And that's just put in position right at the top of the brass side, and you put it on with plastic weld. Now this does affect the roof, so don't sort of go mad on this and put too much on. Just sort of, it'll stick to your fingers too, which is slightly annoying. Just make sure that goes into position. Up ever so slightly. There we go. Just gives a better line. It should rest on the top of the brass if you've done it properly. And then just work along, reinstating as you go. Look along in perspective, it's just starting to lift there. And you've got a few minutes before the adhesive actually goes hard. Just sort of press it in. Into position. When it's thoroughly set, you rub it down with the fiberglass brush. And on the ends, just nick it off with the Swan Morton knife. And there you are, one reinstated cornice cantrail. This is an unmodified bogie, and can you see those little tabs? I keep on saying can you see, apparently that's no go with DVDing, but they've got this kind of little step, this little sort of clip. Well, just take most of that off, just sort of file it away. bogies won't drop off. They will if you file it all the way, but just take most of that off. Then you can take the bogies in and out, on and off, as often as you wish. You know, they won't fall out.